And we are live, everybody. Welcome to the AEW Revolution post show.
I'm John Pollock here alongside Wai Ting. And for the next hour or so, we are going to be going through AEW Revolution that just finished up from the Wintrust Arena in Chicago, Illinois. AEW's first pay-per-view of 2020. And the headline would be a new AEW champion, Jon Moxley, becoming the second champion in AEW history, pinning Chris Jericho in the main event. We're going to run through the whole card, and we'll be also opening up the phone lines to all of you to get your feedback as well. But this was an event that certainly you have to look at coming off, I think, the strongest consecutive weeks of television AEW has put together over the past month. They really honed in on the build-up, in particular, of the top three matches, but I think every match on this show had a purpose, had a story attached to it, and this felt like an important show going into it, not just a run-of-the-mill pay-per-view at all.
Yeah, I would say unlike many of their previous shows, including Full Gear, I feel like a lot of those shows were really just sold on, I think, the strength of the in-ring quality itself. Here, I think you had both the promise of good in-ring quality as well as fantastic storytelling that led up to it. So I would say they're certainly hitting their groove and firing on all cylinders heading into this.
Yeah, this is going to be certainly one where the number will tell a number of interesting, where the state of AEW is in terms of turning their television viewers into pay-per-view customers. Another notable fact is that in the UK, ITV box office, that doesn't exist anymore. So now that will take a chunk out of this pay-per-view that they now have to go to Fight TV as well. So when the final pay-per-view number comes in, we do have to keep that in comparison. That will be different from previous pay-per-views, but there seemed to be a pretty healthy buzz for this show.
I felt that way.
I would say, you're looking at, all things considered, if you're eliminating like the UK portion, I would say like you'd still be, to me, like with all the television, all the buildup, I'd be disappointed if this didn't hit 100, even with the loss of the like UK buys.
How did Full Gear do?
Full Gear did right around that number.
Okay.
But again, that was with being on pay-per-view in the UK, which this time it's sending people now to like Fight TV, which I imagine you're not going to draw the same number.
So you think it'll do better than Full Gear, or no?
I think it should. Yeah.
So do you think it'll do better than Double or Nothing?
Double or Nothing did. I didn't sense the same level as Double or Nothing, because that was really like we had Allin, but this was like the first official AEW show that I think just had a larger amount of interest, which is notable. The fact that now they're on TV, as opposed to before where it was just largely word of mouth and like the internet.
That question really comes down to whether or not they are selling their pay-per-views based on hype or based on good television.
And in 2020, how many wrestling fans are like shy away from a $50 price tag?
Sure.
I mean, it's one thing that, you have that consumer base in MMA and boxing that will pay, even boxing now, you're still getting people that are now seeing like DAZN. It's you spend $20 a month, you get the biggest fight. Last weekend, that Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight was enormous, and it's the early projections are 800 to 850 that are well below expectations. And was the price tag a part of that? Because that seemed like that was that translated beyond just boxing last week. That was a major fight. And you're looking at the wrestling world where, you're just looking at it, and it's, to me, $50 for a show. That's still a point where, man, that's a big ask of fans at the moment.
It is a lot, but I think what helps AEW is the fact that they do the pay-per-view so infrequently. Unlike other companies, I mean, they're only asking you to invest that much into them a few times a year.
I will say that I think, like, again, I thought there was like a healthy buzz for this show going in, but I think in comparison to past pay-per-views, I do feel StarCast was a big add-on that made that weekend feel like a big thing. Like with all the stuff that was going on, you'd be paying attention to all this different stuff that was leading up to the pay-per-view, and it just felt like this was a big event. And I think StarCast, it complemented these pay-per-view weekends well, and we saw with this weekend, because of C2E2, they didn't do it, and they're not going to have StarCast coming up in May either, that do you think that affects the buzz at all, or is that more so going to affect those that are traveling to these shows?
Maybe to the hardcore fan base, which I guess at this point is a lot of people. Because I would say some of those early Starcasts, you kind of had like the aura of CM Punk surrounding some of those events. I would say maybe it makes a difference for people making the travel to these events, but for me personally, I don't think I would have been that much more interested in this show had Starcast existed. I think my interest level was already very high based off of the television, with or without Starcast.
And how do you feel Saturday night is working for them for that being their pay-per-view night?
I like it. I mean, it's weird because I like NXT on Sunday, but I like AEW on Saturday. In the end,
What about Thursday afternoon?
No, that's some people like that, but I don't think it makes a difference either way.
It'll cut through all of that. Mm-hmm. So again, that'll be an interesting number to see in the weeks to come. But Revolution, as we mentioned, from the Wintrust Arena, they did call this a sellout on the broadcast in Chicago, and on the pre-show we had a really simple promo backstage with Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky asking Christopher Daniels to stay backstage, and Daniels feeling that they're buying into all these rumors of him being the Exalted One. So Excalibur and Taz were there to call the lone pre-show match that was Kazarian and Sky against the Dark Order, and this was a fine tag match, really nothing wrong with it. And we had Stu Grayson sending Sky off his shoulders into a sit-out powerbomb from Evil Uno. Then Kazarian came in with a double clothesline after being shot into them. And then, out of nowhere, Evil Uno nailed Sky from behind with a clothesline, and Grayson just got the cover from Scorpio Sky. It didn't seem like people were ready for that to be the finish. 9 minutes, 23 seconds. I would say in a similar position. I thought this was a much better pre-show match than we had with the Viking Raiders and the OC on Thursday. That again, it was.
I don't even remember that one.
Well, it was, for a tag match that was just kind of thrown onto the pre-show, which I saw both of these shows presenting. I would say this was the better one, but also not a match that I think too many people would be thinking about after the show.
No. I mean, I expected them to make some big announcement regarding, when the reveal of the Exalted One might be. We didn't really get that here. Instead, what we got was the post-match involving Christopher Daniels.
Afterward, Dark Order is beating down Kazarian and Scorpio Sky when Colt Cabana's music plays, and he comes out, and Cabana got one of the bigger reactions, at least the early portion of the show.
Chicago.
In Chicago, it was a surprise. Cabana and Grayson just traded blows, and then Dark Order had the numbers advantage. They beat down on Cabana, and the arena is chanting for Cabana when a hooded figure walks out, reveals himself to be Christopher Daniels, but it's all a swerve because he attacks Dark Order and hits an angel's wings, and that was it. They just kind of, the baby faces posed in the ring, and the mystery will continue about the reveal of the Exalted One. But the idea here of Christopher Daniels aligning himself with SCU and by extension Colt Cabana
seems to extinguish the idea of Christopher Daniels being the Exalted One, which I don't think anybody really bought into anyway, especially with, I think, expectations and rumors about Matt Hardy being so strong, and the tease with Christopher Daniels, I think, being a little maybe too obvious too. I don't necessarily thought that this reveal felt that big. It felt like a buy-in worthy reveal, which basically means that it was just kind of there ultimately. I think Colt is great for the Chicago crowd. I understand why they chose him here, but I thought he was a pretty awkward fit to jam into the middle of this, story that's been progressing for quite a while on its own now. To just have Colt Cabana all of a sudden injected into it. I don't know if this means that he'll be an AEW or if this was just a one night only thing. I kind of feel like it's more of a one night only thing.
Well, it seems like the Jeff Cobb precedent is AEW will use people that they don't have under deals, and if you're Colt Cabana as well, you suddenly just got a couple weeks off from New Japan. That if they wanted to, so. He's got some free dates now, so. I don't know. This really felt like a one-off to me that they were in Chicago and he wasn't there wasn't any kind of angle shot with him. It was more so just to throw him out there, and he got a great reaction.
Got a great reaction live. I wonder how it translated to maybe other parts of the country. For me, it felt a little bit out of nowhere. I thought this guy was in Chaos. I didn't know he was an SCU.
That would have been funny if he came out and then realized, hey, dude, this is for SCU. You're not from I guess Daniel's really technically isn't from Southern California either, but he's migrated.
Sure.
That could have been the joke here.
Maybe he's from South Chicago.
Excalibur, I actually would have expected to have a line like, he's not part of this group. So that was it. They brought out Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone as Taz tagged out.
As a buy-in, I thought this was a good, brief, inoffensive buy-in. I think I sometimes I feel like some of the elements from the countdown special might have worked well here, just to kind of drive people home. But I mean, as we've seen in their previous buy-ins, they kind of just treat them as like, they give them more of a live feel, with the announcers doing sort of like the big sell at the end.
I also like these being 30 minutes
Yes.
as opposed to the WWE hour-long kickoffs that are they just go on and on. A half hour, this was very concise and kept it brief.
I wanted to also talk about some of the production elements, because this is a pay-per-view. They're sometimes different. So we had a beautiful looking set here with AEW. We again got the elevated ramp, but this time they added like a big graphics board on the ramp itself. Looked amazing. Looked fantastic. Also, we had synchronized light up bracelets that were given to the entire crowd. And they were synchronized so that like it was essentially, it turned the crowd into a giant video wall that would with the wristbands changing color, being controlled by some sort of central
The fans
system.
were part of the production.
I thought it was really cool. I thought it was really unique.
Yeah, I'd probably get tired of that thing on my wrist all night.
You probably wouldn't have to put it on if you didn't want to.
I'm sure it's optional. Yeah, it's not like everybody had it on, but it was it was different. I like different ideas that are incorporated to look like an alternative.
Trying new
different
things.
ideas. Yeah,
they're trying new things. We had cold open video package that I thought was very well done as well. I thought increase in quality from what we saw at Full Gear.
Maybe you can comment a little more on some of the camera work tonight as well, because it seemed it was spotty at times.
There were certainly rough patches in the music cues.
Several of them, yes.
Several of them in some of the cutaway shots. I think I personally had a lot of issue with. So we'll get to all that.
Sure. So we go into the pay-per-view portion. So it's Jim Ross, Excalibur, and for the first time on an AEW pay-per-view, Tony Schiavone was available this weekend and was on the three-man broadcast. But we were remarking on this as we were watching it, but Taz has been doing a very good job, and he is a seamless transition whenever one of these guys is not available. And I think, incorporating him more on Dynamite as well. I think he fits in perfect with this group.
Like I've said in my, when we're talking about this week's Dynamite, I actually prefer him to Tony. I think he really has surprised me with how serious of an announcer he is. He's not jokey Taz. He's somebody who's not just in tune as he's always been with like the in-ring technique, but he knows the stories, he knows the characters, because he's been doing Dark. He knows all the undercard guys.
Whenever he brings up like the judo roots, we had Desiree Schalise sing the national anthem at the start of the show, and then kicking things off were Dustin Rhodes and Jake Hager. Hager comes out, and his wife Catalina is in the front row, and he just sticks his tongue right down her throat.
Oh, man.
And the camera zooms in on this for an uncomfortable amount of time. And it was almost like a total disconnect from the Jake Hager character that we've had to this point.
That was my problem with it. I mean, I think it's a good heel thing. Oh, a guy makes up with his hot wife before the match. But it's got...
He was playing someone completely different tonight.
Completely different from the inner circle Jake Hager that we've seen up until this point.
Rhodes came out with a QT Marshall, but he did the Lana introduction and just immediately walked to the back. And Rhodes was wearing a shirt that read, "I'm here to fight Jericho's bitch." And this encouraged Jericho's bitch chants throughout, which thankfully were on pay-per-view and not on television.
Oh, man. Yeah, I can't imagine.
That would have made this match unbearable.
Death.
They went into the crowd, like a ton of fire from Dustin Rhodes here. Catalina is shouting instructions at Hager, and Dustin sends Hager into the guardrail, walks up to Catalina, and just forces himself on her, kissing her, a spot out of the mid-'80s, mid-'70s that is just so dated and uncomfortable today that it's not a good babyface spot.
I had the same reaction watching it.
It's just from another era.
The crowd reacted to it live. I mean, because Dustin's a babyface, but man, sitting at home without feeling that live energy, all we're seeing is, this supposed babyface in 2020, forcing himself on another man's wife, which I I think, some people will complain, oh, what are you complaining about? Why are you so sensitive? This is, classic wrestling stuff. But I mean,
that's the thing we talked about recently on the show. It's like, oh, it's just pro wrestling. It's like, no, I don't know. I'm not saying this like took the match away, but to me, it's just, I think it's a spot that I don't like anymore.
At the very least, I think some people would have felt comfortable with this, and my problem with it is that it is just a really dated spot that makes AEW, a company that I consider to be very progressive,
it's tone deaf
to look dated. Yeah.
Hager then slammed Rhodes on the mat, and he hit a Vader bomb for a 2 count. Hager did the Tyson Fury where he stuck the tongue out to go lick Dustin, but Shivani noted there was no blood. Rhodes got a near fall after kicking him low and hitting a destroyer that Aubrey Edwards missed. And then Rhodes went for an armbar that got countered into an ankle lock by Hager. Rhodes broke free. And then with Edwards' back turned, Hager hit the knee low, applying the arm triangle that Hager has won 2 of his fights in Bellator. And Edwards just immediately called for the bell at 14:43.
I had no idea about that, what you just said. And I wish the announcers informed me about it.
They did mention it once that he has won in MMA with that hold.
When did they mention that?
I did catch it near the end, I think, when he applied it.
Okay. They didn't even recognize that it was an arm triangle until the tap, or
right. Close
to the tap.
Yeah. It should have been set up a bit better.
So, I mean, I just, for a move that I guess was supposed to be a finish, I maybe it could have been served a little bit better. I was personally disappointed by this match. I think for as much as they've reinvented Hager in a non-speaking role, in ring, this felt like a Jack Swagger match to me. It did not feel all that different. Very slow pace, WWE style in the middle. But I don't think Hager really has that ability to work the crowd in a way that a Chris Jericho might, or an MJF even might be able to, in order to get away with that slower style. And I think Dustin, for as much as I think the crowd liked him, because he was just sort of fighting from behind here, the crowd didn't really latch on to much of what he had to offer.
I thought Dustin did the heavy lifting in this match, but I too felt that this match, it just seemed to be doing a lot. And there was, to me, this felt like Catalina happened to be at the pay-per-view, so let's utilize her. And it was to the detriment of the match, because you were almost introduced to her that you're expecting her to somehow get involved. It was a total separation from the Hager that has just been this strong, silent mercenary on television, and now all of a sudden he's playing this completely different character. I thought Dustin showed a lot of fire, but this also it missed the mark to me that I was hoping this one would hit.
Yeah, and I'll say again, I had very high expectations for every match on this show, including this one, because Dustin has just been received so well by the audience, and I didn't really get that same level of emotional attachment that I would have expected here. Do you think maybe introducing Swagger's wife into this was there maybe they had some concern that he didn't have enough in his repertoire to just do a plain singles MMA style match?
It really felt like that shouldn't have been a problem. I feel in this, I felt like the two styles would have been fine, but it almost seemed like they didn't want Hager to do
shooter.
A shooter style, MMA style, where this goes 5 or 6 minutes. They wanted to get 15 out of this. And in order to do that, they had to do a lot of shortcuts. They involved Catalina. And to me, it just was such a mishmash of different ideas colliding together. And I think this match could have just used somebody to say, okay, we got to cut certain stuff out and maybe streamline this match. And it would overall be more effective. I do think this audience did want to be behind Dustin, and I think they were largely when he would fire up, and I think Dustin did look good in this, but this one, yeah, like you, I had high expectations for this, and I just felt it didn't really hit its mark. And afterwards, I don't even know where this necessarily, Hager is more so positioned at this point, kind of the goofball jock than the serious muscle that, and maybe that's the role that they see him in.
Yeah. I would say his role, I think, is still kind of being developed within the inner circle, because he's just, sort of such a strong silent type. You could still go into many different directions with him. And it's clear from this match that they're still experimenting.
Then afterwards, we go to This was not part of the show, or nor was he acknowledged, but Dan Lambert was there in the front row.
In the front row.
MLW's Dan Lambert now.
Yes. As was Scrump, who fought off food poisoning and an IV drip in order to make it to this show in his post-wrestling shirt front row. So shout out to Scrump.
I'll mention, if for those that aren't following MLW, heel Dan Lambert with King Mo, it's a pretty good act right now. The two of them paired together. So
awesome.
And I think King Mo is, not all that different from what they're trying to do with Hager. It's a bit different, but like King Mo certainly works so much better as a heel than when he was a babyface in TNA. So far, and Lambert's great. Anyway, Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara was next. The beginning minutes of this were just absolutely insane. Guevara gets draped on the guardrail, and Darby went for just this insane suicide dive, and he caught his feet on the rope, and he's going like a torpedo towards Sammy Guevara. He came so close to just cracking into Guevara's head because he was in like the Tree of Woe position on the guardrail. Thankfully, they didn't crack heads, but they were dangerously close.
I mean, at best, like Darby took a huge like.
Oh, it was still nasty,
crash.
But man, head to head, that just looked frightening. Guevara then gets up. He takes the skateboard and whips it at Darby's head from the floor. Allin is then placed on a table, and Guevara comes off the top to the floor with a 630 splash, putting Darby through the table. This is all before the bell rings to start the match. We then get the beginning of the buckle, rotating stunner, and the coffin drop to win in 4 minutes and 58 seconds. This was really closer to a 10-minute match with all the stuff beforehand, but this was as action-packed a 5 minutes as you could pack into that time. There was not... And it didn't even feel like it was just mind-numbing either, but it was just consistent action, and these guys did not let up. I thought this totally worked.
It told a story from the get-go. It was like Darby Allin taking a lot of risk, fucking up, and Sammy Guevara capitalizing, beating the shit out of him, laying him out before getting into the ring to start the match so that he could already have the advantage once the bell rings. And I thought Sammy... to me, was the star of this match.
He looked great.
Darby Allin's fantastic, but I think Sammy's heel work was excellent here. The way he was able to control the crowd, played just such a great heel, capitalizing on, a wounded opponent all match. I thought he was fantastic.
Like, this is one of the better 5 minutes you're going to see.
This would have certainly been the match I would have started the pay-per-view off with. It was a hot, fast opener.
You wanted to see more after. Like, this was... I really preferred this as opposed to these guys going, like, 16 minutes and...
told a story, man. Like, even like the botch here at the beginning, or like some of these other moves that didn't look all that crisp, it helped play into the story, So I thought this was a great showcase of your next generation of guys.
Both these guys, I think, helped themselves greatly with this performance. I thought it was one of the strongest things on the show. Kenny Omega, Hangman Page against the Young Bucks for the tag titles. Surprised at all where this was placed on the show.
A little bit. I don't know if I would have expected them to go like in order of importance, like we've kind of seen in the past.
I think they should have on this show, to be honest.
I think they should have too.
I think it got hurt later, where you clearly saw like the dip down, and that puts a lot of pressure on those matches to try and over deliver. But I think that it kind of affected the flow of this show.
The only exception being Pac versus.
They could have followed anything tonight. They could have followed anything.
You could have placed that match anywhere.
But this was third on the show. Omega's right shoulder is all taped up that they're crediting to Pac coming out of the Iron Man match. And early on, Omega and Nick Jackson.
Well, I have to say, the storytelling starts even before the match. It starts with the entrances, and it starts with the look on Hangman Page's face as he's just like, he looks pissed off. Kenny Omega comes in, and Page has his back turned to Kenny.
They're out separate entrances.
They've got, Page is going nose to nose with Matt Jackson. Like, I'm watching Page's acting from, like, even before the bell until he's out of the arena.
He was really tremendous, like, pre and post match in this whole thing. Omega and Nick, they shake hands early on, and then moments later, Matt offers his hand to Page, and Page spits in his face. So then the champions go to town, attacking Matt's lower back, and the announcers talk about his past issues with his back. And Page goes over to the timekeeper's area. He's going to powerbomb Matt, but Omega rolls Matt back into the ring, saying we're going to do it inside of the ring. some of the highlights here, they double teamed Matt, and Omega then hoisted Matt into a suplex by Page, and Page like dropped Matt on his neck. This looked awful.
It's a spot they've been running like as a tag team, the shove into the high ankle German, but this was a little too high.
Nick did the fantastic comeback with all of these kicks. Then he flipped onto the stage and came back with a destroyer into the ring to Page. And then as Page comes back, he does the Marty Scurll setup to apply the chicken wing on Matt Jackson.
Did the just kidding super kick as well to the knee.
Yes.
At the beginning, which was a detail I absolutely loved because, of the storyline implication.
Yeah, like teasing just that.
Marty Scurll was the first guy to be ostracized from the Elite. I'm calling back to him to show that I feel the same way. I feel as left out as he did.
And everyone recognized it too.
Absolutely.
So Matt is able to reverse out of the chicken wing as Nick then lands a 450 splash onto Page. Page then lifted up, it was Nick onto the turnbuckle, and he did the Bandito spot with the fall-away slam moonsault, and only gets the 2 count. The audience is on their feet at this point. Omega fires up 2 Snapdragons and a Tiger Driver 98 onto Nick. He kicks out of that. Then Nick does a reverse Rana off of the top. Matt did the rolling Northern Lights suplexes to Page on the ramp.
He did it from the inside of the ring to the outside, and then before he did the last one onto the video screen, he gives this little pause and a look to the audience like, all right, these first few were for a competition. This last one is because I hate this motherfucker.
So they hit an indie taker to Page on the ramp, and now the audience is booing the Bucks. Mm-hmm. And they're getting behind Hangman. Mm-hmm. They proceeded,
and I thought that was just so rude.
It's the idea that the Bucks are trying to embarrass them as well.
They're using like the move of Kenny's, like that Kenny used to do with his ex, basically, to remind, to just throw salt into the wound of it all plays into the escalation of like hatred that progressed throughout this match.
I love that they used this.
It got super personal.
It was great. Omega kicks out at it at 1.
Yeah. Like he was so pissed, he wasn't even going to lay down for this.
Yeah, that was like a really great part of this match. And then I also enjoyed this. Matt then in frustration starts stomping the injured shoulder. So earlier on, Omega was not going to stoop to that level for Matt's injured back that he has a history of getting powerbombed through the timekeeper's table. And when Matt loses his cool, he goes after the weakened portion of Kenny Omega. I thought like this was some great stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah. They set up Omega for the Meltzer driver when Page came back, took Nick off the apron, and put him through a table. They hit the combination V-trigger buckshot lariat. They've been building this up for months, and Matt kicks out of it. Huge response to that. Omega tries for the one-winged angel to Matt. His shoulder is so fucked up. He tries to go to the right one, and he can't do it. So Page comes in and hits Matt with the one-winged angel. Nick makes the save. I would have been fine if that was the end.
I lost it. I thought this was so good. I'm such a nerd. Like you have to appreciate so much the detail of a guy going for his finisher and realizing his shoulder that he usually does it with is so hurt that he has to resort to using the other one, which gives the other guy, the victim, enough time to escape. And then the other story that plays into it is Paige saying, look at this look at this dude. I've been held back long enough. Let me do your move because I can do it better than you. So great.
Nick makes the save for the one-winged angel cover, and then Paige hits a buckshot lariat to Nick on the stage, and then one to Matt in the ring. Paige pins Matt clean at 30 minutes and 5 seconds. This was a tremendous match. Hands down match of the show. Yes. This was what 11 days of what Kenny Omega has done with the tag title match with Phoenix and Pentagon with Paige, the Iron Man this week, and then capping it off with this. I love this match. It was fantastic, and I really liked the subtlety at the end of all of this, that your best friends at the end of this, they were assholes to you, and it's like, here I was the one ultimately that had your back here, and Matt here stomping away at your shoulder. These guys invoking Kota Ibushi into this match. These are your friends?
Certainly, yeah.
There was so much in this match.
The in ring was absolutely awesome, but I mean, none of it matters unless you had the story. And this was a match where you had plenty of story. And I think in the leading role as breakout performer was Adam Page. We know how good he is in ring, but at least I personally never seen him be able to tell this emotional, character-driven story. And everything he's been doing with the drinking has led up to this point. And the guy like fucking delivered. Like, he was amazing here, from the entrance to the match itself to everything post-match. Great subtle looks. There were some beautiful details in this match that we had talked about. You know, the Marty Scurll references, indicating Page's perhaps his regret that he didn't join Marty. You know, when Marty didn't join the Elite afterwards. The Golden Trigger was great. I love the stuff with the One-Winged Angel. You know, this was a match, as I believe Nick Jackson has said, it was very much influenced by the Golden Lovers Young Bucks match and the type of storytelling that they were trying to do there. I don't think for me it reached the emotional heights of that story, because that was a story that took longer to tell. It was years in the making, really, and it was also, I think, maybe like this to me felt more like it was a replication. And because it was a shorter feud, but it very much like treaded in that similar territory, and it's my favorite type of wrestling, when you can combine story with just incredible in-ring athleticism, and these guys were masters at it.
Yeah, and and Omega and Page keep the tag titles, which I wasn't so sure they would here. But
you know, the story's too good to extinguish, because once they lose the belt, you know they're going to Kenny versus Page. I think they could get way more life out of this before they go there.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot where you can continue this too, like of whether it is Omega more so siding with Page now, seeing him as like this guy who truly does have my back here. I can trust this guy, versus the Bucks, who I now have, there is like this underlying like vengefulness towards them, instead of being like your friends who we were just going to be, the line that Matt used, that we're competitors and we're going to win those titles, and feeling that they were underhanded in some of their tactics in this match.
We'll see where they go. I mean, the post-match kind of indicates that, Kenny's cool with the Bucks, but Page is still somewhat ostracized.
Well, afterwards, it was Kenny was with the Bucks and Page was not going to celebrate with them. But in the end, it was the Bucks leaving, and then Page put his arm around Omega and they left together.
Right.
So, again, this was certainly the match to go out of your way to see if you missed this pay-per-view. And then in the unenviable task of following this was Nyla Rose and Kris Statlander for the AEW Women's title. There was no getting the crowd back this quick for this one. Like, this certainly was the one hurt most by the crowd, but let's be honest, this match was not good.
Yeah. I mean, I think this match had a tough task either way, just given the experience level of both women in a spot like this. But especially after the last one, it was going to have to be a really great match. And it wasn't, unfortunately.
Yeah, Statlander hit a series of suicide dives, and Jim Ross was pointing out she's got to bring Rose into the ring to win the title. Statlander was then draped on the top rope. Nyla climbed to the top and was going to go for like a guillotine leg drop, but Statlander did a handstand and walked herself into the middle, lay down, and blew a kiss at Nyla Rose, who was just waiting there on the top turnbuckle. Then Statlander came off the ropes and got hit with a beast bomb, but kicked out of that. Statlander then set up for a superplex, and you could see like her footing was not right, but she continued and tried to fight through it and slipped, and nearly this could have been way worse. This superplex was awful. They go to the opposite corner, and Nyla Rose stopped a top rope Hurricane Rana and is trying several times to lift her up for the beast bomb, and finally hits it after struggling and wins the match in 12 minutes 46 seconds. I thought this was the weakest match on the show. It was in a terrible position, but it's not like they went out and had this match that I can't say like they went out to and prove people wrong either. This didn't work.
It was a match that was hurt by placement, perhaps hurt just by the quality of match that it was, but also hurt because I think these are just two people that just aren't as. I think Nyla is like pretty. The audience is very familiar with, but Kris Statlander is still brand new and somebody that I think really hasn't made enough of a connection with the crowd in order to have a spot on a stacked show like this, unfortunately. So the crowd was respectful. They did not really seem that engaged, and I would say their reactions, at least across TV, felt very flat throughout. So, in hindsight, I wonder if like Kris Statlander was the best for this role because she clearly seems to be somebody that they have big plans for. I kind of feel like an appearance like this kind of hurts her, kind of exposes her as somebody who doesn't feel like a big deal coming out of this.
Yeah, I mean, this was one where it just the two sides just it was really in the last few minutes that it really to me kind of fell apart, and it was just kind of the atmosphere didn't help either. Cody and MJF followed that, and we had Cody coming out to a live performance from downstate along with his huge entourage that featured Arn Anderson, Brandy, Dustin, Stephen Amell was there, and then there were others as well. The highlight of this was Arn doing the throat slash at MJF, and it looked like his head was going to fall off his shoulders. So we were watching this with our good friend Damian Abraham, and he pointed out to us how it's clear Cody is a heel.
And I was arguing against him, okay? But, like, Damian, in hindsight, had some really great points. Like, this is a guy who owns or is an executive in the company, comes out with a heavy entourage full of guys against MJF and Wardlow, really just two guys. But I was like, oh, come on, like, this is all your interpretation, Damian, Like, we were arguing back and forth almost. But then, like, throughout the match, I started to understand where he was coming from.
Listen, and we've talked about this before. Like, there's a lot of elements of the Cody character that they are heel traits. Yeah. And I mean the money and just the way he just casually threw his money out to get the rematch with MJF. It's like, but he is so loved by this audience.
My argument is that unlike a guy who just appears to be rich, like the $1 Million Man. To me, I think why the audience in AEW gravitates towards Cody is that they see the hard work that he's done, the risk that he's taken, leaving the WWE, building this company, from a dare, online, to this, and so it feels like money that's earned rather than just money that was handed down. But Damian doesn't see it that way.
No, he sees Cody.
The rich son of Dusty Rhodes.
Playing Cody, but living as MJF is essentially what he sees. But so overall, I just from a overall perspective, I thought this was the best match I've seen MJF have. I think that he showed that he can do like a big match with like a heavy storyline attached to it, because that's always been the critique of MJF, is that he's this fantastic character. Can he be a big like main event player to do the match? And I just thought, he's not the guy that's going to be doing anything in like the Kenny Omega repertoire. But I mean, to me, like just his mannerisms, the heel tactics in this, the just little things that he did in this match, I was very impressed by him doing this over the course of 25 minutes.
I think he's really lived up to that like main eventer's role over the past, this entire Cody program. And I would certainly say he's lived up to that main eventer's tan as well in this match.
Oh, dude, he, I think, just locked himself into a tanning bed and woke up on Saturday ready for this pay-per-view.
He's probably put himself in like a spray tan tornado.
Boy. MJF was repeatedly just rolling to the floor, trying to get away from Cody. Early on, he hit a Cody cutter, and MJF kicked out at 1. And then MJF, this was, he decided to work over the toe. Of Cody. His broken toe from the moonsault off the steel cage that they had talked about on the floor. Okay, this really was Exhibit B for Damian's case. Brandy, without any provocation, just walks up to Wardlow and throws a beer in his face just to provoke him and see if he would go for it. Cody then hits him with a suicide dive. But then MJF snaps Cody's arm on the top rope, and Wardlow drives the shoulder into the post as Cody had his arm worked over, and MJF eventually went for the Salt of the Earth, which is his Fujiwara armbar. Then he ties up both arms and the leg watching his Zack Sabre Jr. matches, and Cody bit the bottom rope watching his Tomohiro Ishii matches, the one from Long Beach.
Yes, right.
MJF took off Cody's boot and proceeded to bite the toe. Mm-hmm. Cody then took MJF to the top and hit the inverted superplex. And at one point here, MJF just comes up and a faucet is leaking out of his forehead.
I don't know if we missed the point where he was supposed to have like been busted open. Last offensive move I saw him take was that inverted superplex, but maybe
Yeah, we might
else.
have just missed the spot in this, but he's just got the whole Crimson Mask going on here. Brandy runs off the apron and Wardlow catches her. Cody tells him to put her down as Arn comes from behind and rescues Brandy. So then Cody goes for a running bicycle kick and misses Wardlow and takes out Uncle Arn. And Arn just sold this like he was dead. He's down on the floor and the match has to continue. Cody and MJF get into a big striking exchange. Cody does the flip flop and fly. The crowd's chanting Dusty. MJF comes back, hits the double cross. Cody kicks out. Behind the referee's back, Cody kicks MJF in the balls and then hits Din's Fire, the vertebreaker. MJF kicks out. Then, after MJF was admonished by referee Paul Turner, Cody gets the weightlifting belt. He whips him. Paul Turner gets in the way. Cody says, let me just whip him again. And just to have a modicum of sympathy for MJF here, who is trying to fight the enormous numbers disadvantage of all these people at ringside, a goddamn live band, a crooked referee.
A live band.
And this guy
Downstate was going to come in for the advantage.
Well, come on. He had to listen to that song live. I mean, his ears are bleeding. Maybe that's where the blood came from. So MJF gets whipped and then he's on his knees. He's crying for forgiveness. He hugs Cody and then he spits in his face again. And Cody snaps. One double cross, one crossroads, two crossroads, goes for a third crossroads, but on the third, MJF hits him with a knee and then pulls out the ring from the trunks, nails him in the head, puts the ring away, and climbs on top, and he pins Cody at 24 minutes and 34 seconds.
I like the finish. The idea I thought was that Cody's own cockiness and lust for revenge is what ultimately cost him the win.
He's Tetsuya Naito.
I guess
going for that Stardust press.
Yeah. MJF, I certainly felt like needed to win this one in order to kind of continue where he's at. I think the feud even continues coming off of this point with MJF being the first victor. All in all, though, I had very high expectations for this one, and so I was left a little bit disappointed because I thought the energy of the crowd was relatively flat for a feud that I thought was built so well. I had trouble getting into Cody as sort of that sympathetic babyface. Instead, I found him to be very much the aggressor. It was MJF that was the one that was bleeding. Cody had the 3-on-2 advantage. The referee let him use the belt. I felt he was more of a sympathetic babyface even in that Wardlow match than he was here. But I wonder if part of that kind of plays into the finish too. The fact that Cody is now so cocky, he's kind of gotten ahead of himself and not realizing, you have to be a little bit humble and not to take a guy like MJF that lightly.
Yeah, it was. We know with the Cody pay-per-view matches, he's going for the big epic drama. Like that's going to be his role with these deep grudge matches. So that's kind of the expectation level. I can't complain too much about this. Like I enjoyed it for what it was. At 24 and a half minutes, I didn't think it dragged. I thought it was the right amount of time. It didn't have, certainly you go back to Dustin. It was not Dustin. It was not that level of heat or drama. But I thought for MJF, I thought this was certainly an above expectation level for me was met from MJF. I was impressed with him playing the heel in this match a lot. Yeah. And with Cody, yeah, it's another loss for him. And I guess it's, do you continue this? Do you take a break from this? And MJF is thrust into, this is a big win for MJF that with the outcome of the main event throws him into kind of that mix as well, like getting such a big win. Or you just continue this feud with some big blow off at Double or Nothing.
I think you can go there if you wanted to. I think the program can have enough legs. But at the same time, if you wanted this to be some sort of resolution and Cody just, blames himself for the loss and moves on, I'd be fine with that as well. So I think they can go both ways. Now, something that they're also doing the long play on is Arn.
That was obviously something big that they included in this.
Cody kicked Arn here, and I think that the expectation is always now going to be from this point on, it's going to be when is Arn going to be the one to turn on Cody. And they didn't do it here. They walked together to the back as if nothing was wrong, although Arn was separated from Cody and Brandy. But that seems to be sort of the next big storyline.
maybe, and they announced this later in the show, is that the March 25th show in New Jersey, they're going to be doing their version of War Games that they're promoting as Blood and Guts.
Yes.
And to me, to do that match, I think that would be the time to do something involving like the Elite coming together. And they're all on different pages at the moment.
Yeah.
Pardon the pun.
Yep.
And it's the 5 of them for the first time all in one match teaming together against the 5 big heels.
Like a temporary truce, or does that fix? Does that?
Yeah, and I think you could work in something, where it's like their common opponents at the time. You can get MJF in there, you can get Jericho, whatever your combination is of the 5 heels, but it's the Elite versus them, and that could be Arn's turn. They already teased Arn once with the cage door, and they thought that he was going to throw the door, and he nailed MJF with the door. And you could tease that spot. There's many ways you can go about it, but I think Arn as a babyface manager, to me, that was always going to be a short-term thing. You want to eventually turn him and then let the promos just run wild.
Can't wait.
Although they're just sitting on Tully Blanchard, and that guy's not doing anything.
Yeah.
That's very disappointing.
Oh, maybe he'll be involved.
Sure. I'd love
Maybe
it.
not.
Those two should be like warring managers. I would love it.
They briefly. I mean, that's how Arn was introduced, right?
Yeah.
But haven't really done that much with Tully.
So
we didn't even talk about the tattoo.
So Cody came out and he had this neck tattoo on, and they did tweet out photos of him getting this.
It is a real
done.
tattoo. We were debating. We weren't sure.
So
a real neck tattoo. Would you like? Should we get post wrestling logos on our neck right there?
How about as soon as we get an action figure deal and we finalize it, then let's get tattoos.
I do wonder about that. Maybe he was holding on to his action figures and he was like,
you joke, but those company video games and action figures, providing that's a legit tattoo, they should be pissed.
Oh, well, what I mean is maybe Cody was holding his doll and he was like, kind of plain. Could use a tattoo on the neck.
Well,
it gives them an excuse to sell a new one.
I guess your next generation of
Series
figures.
2, Series 3.
Sure, why not?
And they're not even all printed yet.
Do you like the tattoo?
I think we'll get used to it. As with any sort of outrageous, crazy, like Brock Lesnar's chest tattoo, Mike Tyson's eye thing, we'll get used to it. It'll be a signature of his.
And Cody left the ring apologizing to the crowd.
For the tattoo?
I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking.
In Vegas.
Orange Cassidy versus Pac, the real main event of the show. Before they even lock up, the crowd is chanting, "Holy shit." They traded weak kicks, and Pac just shoved him down, getting annoyed at this guy. And then Cassidy just did these impressive counters and got a roll up. This crowd was going nuts, and instantly you saw Pac is the best opponent for this guy.
I didn't know he would be. I didn't think how this would go because I don't think I've seen Pac do comedy before. And how are they going to do this match?
I liked it because it wasn't even Pac doing comedy.
Yeah.
It was him dealing with a guy's comedy.
Well, he was a straight man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. It worked very well. Pac beat him down. He hit the avalanche brainbuster, but then lifts up Cassidy. The same spot Cody did in the match prior, lifting up MJF. Right. Pac sets up for the Black Arrow, but Cassidy rolls away. Then he rolls away again. Pac blocks him from exiting the ring, and then Pac is circling the ring, not paying attention as Cassidy does a kip up and dives to the floor as he fires up with this huge sequence. Place is erupting. He hits a stun dog millionaire, but then gets crotched on the top turnbuckle. Then he turns it into a swinging DDT off the top, leaps off the top, and hits the diving DDT, Yoshinobu Kanemaru's sudden impact, and this time, it's Pac rolling to the floor to avoid getting covered.
Oh,
it's like this acknowledgement from Pac, begrudgingly, that this guy is taking the fight to me. And it was just like a subtlety from Pac having to resort to removing himself from the ring. And then Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix run down and they attack the best friends. Pac capitalizes by snapping Cassidy's arm and applying the brutalizer as the referee calls for the bell at 13 minutes, 1 second. This tore the house down. Mm-hmm. This totally worked. These guys they gelled perfectly. This was just a great pairing, a great match. And following this, I think you'll probably get a pretty great 6-man with the Phoenix, Pentagon, and Pac against the best friends and Orange Cassidy.
Orange Cassidy, the biggest star in the company right now.
Dude, this guy was a phenomenal signing, and I thought it was a really good signing at the time, and it's just like this guy is so talented.
Yeah,
he's great.
Well, I think much of that was I really do commend I think AEW for their presentation of him, because I think you and I both know if this was Orange Cassidy in any other company, if he was in a TNA, okay, imagine if TNA had him like 10 years ago when they were on TV. I don't even talk about if WWE had this guy. No way would
we change his name.
We wouldn't get this treatment. At best, you would have him on Explosion, okay, or like some throwaway TV match. They protected Orange. They saw that what they had in Orange Cassidy, and they protected him and saved him for a pay-per-view semi-main event. And look at the reaction that it got. It felt like a pay-per-view semi-main event. And coming out of this, Orange Cassidy feels like a legitimately big star that you can save for special occasions. He's your Brock Lesnar of AEW.
He should only do matches on pay-per-views.
Oh my God, this was such an entertaining match. It was just, for me, a creative highlight of the show. Different from anything else at any other mainstream pro wrestling company. Obviously, he's been doing this for quite a long time elsewhere, but this is the first time the mainstream has got to see him wrestle a singles match. And the match told a good story. It was not just, comedy that would infuriate Jim Cornette, even though I'm sure he would be pissed off at this. But it was a believable story of Pac taking this guy lightly, and then Cassidy slowly peeling back the layers to reveal his hidden abilities. And Pac had to compensate, taking him more and more seriously as Cassidy took the match more and more seriously, and it resulted in just this wonderful back and forth that didn't make Pac look foolish and just resulted in like an incredible atmosphere.
I just this guy's a tremendous athlete.
He is.
What he can do, it's just this guy gets way more criticism. I'm blown away when I watch this guy. Like, I'm really impressed with him.
Yeah, I mean, the gimmick wouldn't work if he wasn't a great athlete. That was, like if he was just a slacker who was actually not very athletic, I don't think it would work. But it's the fact that he's the slacker, but when he turns it on, he can actually turn it on. That's that interesting dynamic.
Wow, this was the go-home match for the main event of WrestleMania weekend for me, because I can't wait for that.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be great. Then they promoted the Blood and Guts, their War Games, on March 25th in New Jersey.
So they're calling the cage match Blood and Guts, or are they actually just the event?
They can't call it War Games.
Right.
So Blood and Guts is what they promoted it as.
I love it. I mean,
two rings.
A pay-per-view named after a Vince McMahon comment and an investor's call.
Yes.
Or TV special.
That's where it came from.
Yeah.
So, and I think that kind of tells you what they have to deliver in that match. Like, the fact is we have seen blood on TV now, so it's not like they're that squeamish, TNT. So I would imagine this match, to get the concept over, you're going to see tons of blood in that match.
Some guts, too.
Perhaps, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Here and there.
Possible. Maybe someone will just throw up or something violently. Main event was Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley. Moxley entered the building from outside in the cold.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
In Chicago.
Man. You know how cold it is outside?
Pretty cold, man.
I couldn't imagine walking around sleeveless outside.
Want me to check the weather right now? My app. It is currently -6 with a low of feels like -9 in Toronto.
That's crazy. I would never do this. Chris Jericho. We cut to the Inner Circle Choir, led by singer Meredith Bell, as they performed an a cappella version of Jericho's theme song.
This was amazing.
I
thought it was beautiful.
They played it, and what I liked is that when she was done, they played the actual song, because that's so a big part now of Jericho's entrance is
the sing-along.
Playing the sing-along. Yeah. Exactly, and this crowd everyone was singing it along, so it was a big-time entrance. He came out with Santana and Ortiz, and they fight through the crowd early on. Moxley bit Jericho's stitches that he got from the headbutt on Wednesday, and Jericho sent him through the timekeeper's table with a powerbomb, and Moxley starts bleeding from the forehead, but it's like the right side of his head where the eye patch is.
Yeah, was it like not around the eye or like just under
you could
the
see
eye?
it after when he took the eye patch. It was like he was cut around his forehead,
like
and it was a bad cut.
Serious cut.
It looked like a really ugly cut.
But this was probably a blade job, right?
You would think, yeah.
You would think. It just looks so bad.
It looked like a chunk of his skin was out.
I know.
It didn't look like a cut. From there, Jericho just works the eye. So this is the first pay-per-view where I've seen a toe and an eye specifically targeted.
We've run out of body parts in wrestling, man.
Yeah.
You gotta get creative.
Jericho rang the bell, declaring himself the winner. And then he was in control for a long period of time. And then the spot everyone was waiting. Every grappler out there was watching this weekend. Jericho goes for the Lion Tamer, and it gets countered from Moxley's lessons from Randy Couture.
Oh, yeah.
Step aside, Dustin Rhodes. This is another natural that had his influence over this show.
Dude. I mean, if you watch the Count Dance show, and if you're
Randy Couture is my favorite part.
If you're any sort of like jiu-jitsu nerd, I think you would have been geeking out over Randy Couture finding counters to the walls of Jericho. And they executed a beautiful transition to a heel hook, which Moxley, I mean, it didn't look perfect, but like it looked good enough. I don't know how it really got over with the crowd, unfortunately, but like I really appreciated it.
It wasn't a big part of the match, but for those that watched the countdown, that was like a little Easter egg for you. Ortiz nailed Moxley with the Mad Ball, which is the loaded sock. Jericho hits the Lion Salt, which just the fact he can hit this thing.
Yeah, it still looks great.
It still looks great.
Yep.
Moxley comes back with his own Boston Crab. Jake Hager runs down, forcing Moxley to release it, and this led to Jericho applying the walls and Moxley getting to the rope. Jericho shoves Aubrey Edwards and is trying to get disqualified, but she understands and is not going to disqualify him. And Hager strikes Moxley, leading to one of the biggest pops of the match, where Edwards ejects Hager, Ortiz, and Santana.
I love how she does a 360.
Oh, dude, she's going crazy here. Yeah. She's like, runs away. Jericho gouges the good eye of Moxley, so now Moxley can't see. And Jericho's further attacking the eye. He sets up for the Judas effect, but Moxley ducks and hits a paradigm shift out of nowhere. Moxley removes the eye patch, and the eye is healed. He can see.
Can you explain this to me, though? He could have seen this whole time, so he was using... He wanted it to save it for the last minute so that he could trick Jericho into thinking that he wasn't... actually injured. But this is not like pretending you have an arm injury when you really don't. Putting an eye patch on your eye legitimately handicaps you.
But he has relied on sight from one eye for so long that he has now got it. It's like being ambidextrous at this point. Like you can get by with your left hand instead of the right. And so it was all
he had this extra advantage the whole time of being double visioned, like having the eyesight from two eyes. But he decided to save it till the very end of the match when he really needed the advantage. Is that it? This was the ace up his sleeve, the vision from both eyes.
Yes.
So
he in his back pocket he had 20/20 vision.
So he could have beaten Jericho the whole time with two eyes, but decided to wait until this point.
Well, Jericho spent all this time on this eye that was healed.
But you still feel pain in your eye. I didn't like this. I'm sorry, okay? I like the idea of the eye attack. I love like him wearing an eye patch. It looks cool. But the reveal here didn't work for me, because when you're wearing an eye patch, you are pretty much actually blind. And so I didn't work for me, but maybe it did for others.
You would have to talk to someone that's had an eye patch on, that they adapt to with not needing the other eye.
Yeah, okay, but the idea is that taking the eye patch off afterwards, what, gives you extra powers?
Well, it was the big reveal at the end that the eye is healed, and now he has undercut Jericho's plan of blinding him.
All right.
Well, he hit the larger paradigm shift and then pinned Jericho at 22 minutes and 18 seconds, and Moxley wins the title. Gave a big post-match speech, thanking all the fans, showing his gratitude. Now it's beer o'clock, and there was this pause. They played his music. He said, "What the fuck?" And
I'm making this shit as I go along, he says.
They couldn't cut it off now because he had to get in that final line, line him up, and I'll knock him down, but now I need some whiskey. And thank you. We got that line in, and then they played his music, and he left through the crowd.
Now I need to knock some whiskey down.
Yeah, he went from beer to whiskey in a very quick, the gateway.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we complain a lot about scripted promos. This was clearly not one of those instances. But, you take the bad and the good with improvisation, and this felt like a loose one. So
we both talked today about flipping the title onto Jon Moxley, seeing it in execution. How did you feel about it? And, I would say, taking it, I said today, like, I do not think Jericho has run his course as champion. I think I would have been fine with either outcome here. I would have understood either one, but they went with Moxley, and now going the direction of a babyface champion. And, he is a hot character. So I could have seen this happening.
My ultimate feeling was that I think Moxley is so hot right now coming out of this feud that for him to be unsuccessful coming out of this match, I feel would have derailed his momentum. Meanwhile, Jericho could lose the title, but he's still Chris Jericho. He's still the top heel, and I think you could still very much like position him at the very top of the card, even doing a rematch if you wanted to. Whereas I think Moxley had more to lose. So I would have went with this decision on paper. I like it. I'll say in execution, I thought it came across a little bit. It came across as very much as a surprise. I don't think the crowd felt like they were going to see a title change, nor do I necessarily feel like the match built to that crescendo where you actually felt like it was a finish, And I don't know how much of that had to do. Let me just say, I thought the match was very good, but again, I think the crowd's reaction was flat, at least compared to what my expectations were based on how hot this feud was. I don't know if it was just simply the length of the show getting to the audience, or perhaps the pace and style of this type of Chris Jericho match with Moxley largely selling for so long. I don't know if that's what the crowd wasn't looking for, but I didn't feel that kind of like emotional attachment that we've seen in many great AEW pay-per-view matches. Mm-hmm. But it was still a very good match.
Yeah, I thought I was satisfied with the main event. So similar to like MJF and Cody. I didn't think either was match of the show. I think it was a clear-cut match of the night tonight was the tag title match. Yes. But overall, this pay-per-view, I think it's weird. I almost look at it as like different standards, because I would say of the AEW shows we have watched, I would put this like thumbs in the middle. But I would say just comparing to like...
But everything beforehand was 10 out of 10.
Well, that's it. And I thought tonight, phenomenal match. And just by regular standards, I go thumbs up on this show.
I go thumbs up too, by regular standards. Yeah.
Like if Super Showdown was thumbs down, I can't say this show is only one category above that. No, I just can't.
There is no comparison to be made. The only reason why I feel I'm grading this one so hard is because my expectations were so high based on how good the TV was. And so when I see, like a Cody MJF or a match that didn't really live up to, I think, the grand expectations I might have had in my mind of something similar to like a Cody Dustin or like, a kind of flat reaction for a main event match, I come away from it maybe a bit more disappointed than I otherwise would have been if I had no expectations. But this was a well done show, and I think overall very good series of TV that led up to it.
What did you think about the production overall?
Good. A lot of elements I really enjoyed. Felt the stage looked great. The video packages have looked great. The countdown was excellent leading into this. The camera cutaways throughout the night, I thought were a little bit much, especially in the middle of that Hangman Page Young Bucks match.
There was one. They cut away to a fan who was on his phone.
Yeah, I don't know if often this stuff gets really mistimed, and so maybe the fan just suddenly looked down at the phone, but
he had to have. Like, it had to have been like just they cut too late.
But it was an instance of there just simply being too many of them, interrupting the flow of a match that,
I'm not a fan of cutaways. Period. Like, they have to feel organic, and in wrestling, they feel very forced a lot of the time.
They have to be very well timed. Like, from a director who really kind of can follow the pace of the action and knows when that gap exists. Because they almost like went to a cutaway in that match after every single big move, and these cutaways were terrible. Like, they were either too
like they should not be part of like the formula of every match has to have multiples of them. Like, it should be very rare.
So that bothered me. The music cues, at some were very noticeable. I think a flawless production is one where you don't really notice anything at all, and when you do notice, unfortunately, like in this case here, like with even Daniels at the beginning of the buy-in, he didn't even hit his move yet, and his music played.
That's right.
That was just still a little bit rough around the edges. But beyond that, these are kind of small complaints.
I go 7 out of 10 on this show.
I'd go just based on the quality of that
that tag match.
That was
like one of the best matches this year.
I go 7.5.
Yeah. Like I think I'd put. Where would you put that among the recent Omega matches, the tag and the Iron Man?
Man, well, given the circumstance, this was a bigger match because it was a pay-per-view, you know. So I rank this one above them both.
Yeah, I feel I would too, and I love that Iron Man match.
I
thought that was one of my favorite matches this year. Even I know we're only 2 months in,
Mm-hmm.
so. Those were our thoughts on the show. We will be going to the feedback thread as well as opening up the phone line. So if you would like to call in, give us a dial 1-732-800-4423 or Skype in by searching for Post Wrestling. A few other.
Oops.
Oh, look at that!
Wow, jeez, sorry,
Some
very
anxious
fast.
people ready to call in.
Okay.
Just quickly. We'll mention Roosh won the ROH title on Saturday night, defeating PCO and Mark Haskins in a triple threat match. Nick Aldis got involved, attacked PCO, and that set up Roosh hitting the bull's horns and regaining the title. He lost to PCO back in December.
Sorry, Nick Aldis attacked PCO.
Got
it.
So that was what happened there.
So we're getting PCO Aldis then.
They're doing that at.
Well, we're getting Skrull first, but.
Well, no, it's Super Card of Honor. It's I'll look up the card because all this is on that.
Okay, well, let's first go to the forum and see how you guys voted for this show. AEW Revolution, out of 10, the Post Wrestling Forum thought this show was an 8.2. So,
Okay.
Good rank, very, very good rank. Let's go to the phone lines to see what you guys thought. Neil, our man Neil, you're on the line. What's up?
Hey guys.
Hey,
I'm
what?
Busy.
What time is it there?
It is 5:53 a.m.
Trooper.
on Sunday. Well, it's the weekend, so I wouldn't, I did stay up to watch the pay-per-view I was always going to. I actually enjoy these Saturday night ones because I'm never really doing much on a Sunday, so I can sort of sleep into the afternoon if I wish.
So you watched it on Fight?
Watched it on Fight, yeah, which is, a TV app on the smart TV, so, I don't have to watch it on a tablet or laptop, or I can watch it on television as though it's
Cool.
it's on a channel, so that's cool. Yeah.
So what are some highlights of the show for you?
Definitely the tag title match. That was the standout for me. And also I guess the Sammy versus Darby sprint. It was just like you said, the actual match was only about 5 minutes, but gosh, it was just absolutely packed, but didn't feel like a spot fest in a kind of indie way. It was really, really good. I had some of the same criticisms, I suppose, that you've already mentioned. I think the Catalina kissing spot was very, very ill-conceived. There was a lot wrong with the Cody MJF match. I thought it really didn't live up to my expectations right from the terrible. Can I ask? Did Damien get out of your escape room, John, or was he never slated to be on the podcast?
No, he had to go home, unfortunately. So the invite's always open for Damien, and he. Let me just I think he was worried that he was going to be too negative on the show. So
really?
Yeah. And we never want to force somebody on air if they didn't want to be. We didn't even think he was going to join us, actually. It was totally unexpected that the invite was put out there, but we didn't even know if he would show up, but he showed up.
Well, I think you said on Rewind to SmackDown this morning that you didn't expect him to turn up. I enjoyed his tweets during the show. Telling very obvious lies about the both of you.
No. I mean, Damien was I think, thinking he was too critical, but I actually ended up agreeing with a lot of his points. So look forward to talking to him again. Do you have a question for us, Neil?
But you didn't actually hit him, Wai, did you? Did you, he claimed?
Yeah. I hit a 630 on him through a table. So
not again. But yes, I do have a point, which is just I mean, I know that wrestling shows are hardly public service announcements for hygiene, but all of this spitting in faces and bleeding over each other seems, I don't know, it just seems a little bit out of kilter in the current public health environment, don't you think?
Don't spit on people.
Yeah, I don't really get upset by that. Personally.
Sure, okay, I know. Yeah, it occurred to me, and I thought this isn't going to occur to very many people, but
Yeah.
you know, um, I did have one question too. If I'll be really quick
Quickly,
because
please.
yes, I'll be quick. Um, with it's not fair to compare this show to WrestleMania, but the matches that we're getting, Lesnar, McIntyre, Cena and the Fiend, Goldberg, Roman Reigns. Where's the work rate match? Where's the really exciting in ring match we're going to get on Mania this year? Or are they, in comparison to this show, or is that just for the Saturday before on Takeover? And thanks for taking my call, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Neil.
you, Neil.
The work rate match. We don't know the full card yet. We don't know what Daniel Bryan's plans are.
Yeah, a lot of the key people you would associate with that
But
have not been announced yet. But it's Takeover, not even seeing a card.
Yeah.
It's gonna blow away WrestleMania.
course.
Like that really does service that audience that if you're searching for those blow away matches, they're happening on Saturday night and they're happening at other shows that weekend beyond WrestleMania, which is typically like one of the weaker shows of the weekend wrestling wise.
Unfortunately, I don't think WrestleMania has been sold on work rate matches for a long, long time. It's sold on name attractions. It's sold on the promise of spectacle.
Like Orton and Edge, I think that one has a pretty high expectation level and a bar that people are gonna hopefully get a really dramatic match out of.
Yeah, my hope for a WrestleMania match is drama, it's storytelling, and not necessarily guys pulling off incredibly incredible submissions or great high flying. I want good stories.
Right.
Let's go back to the phone lines right now. Thank you for waiting. We only have one line, everybody, so keep calling in if you want to get have your voice heard, and we'll try to get to as many as you can before we go off air. So, caller, what's up?
Hey guys, it's MJ. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, MJ?
Way, you hit all my talking points on the tag match, the Bucks and Hangman and Omega. If you guys recall, like 2 years ago, we did a review where we talked about being the elite, and I've not had the chance to really call back and mark out on this group the way I probably would like to, but tonight feels like the perfect time. That story that they told in that match, the call to Marty, the Golden Lovers, to that original tag that they did a few years ago, the one week, everything was so great. You guys didn't mention it, the Hangman tease at the end. And I know Braden and Davey mentioned that the tease that Kenny and the Bucks did, where it looked like they might turn on Hangman, just right down to like the very last shot where Hangman's holding the ropes through the Bucks shot. So great. Just this group themselves are the stories they tell in the ring, second to none. I don't know who does it better when it comes to big matches like this.
I missed that detail, probably because we're so busy like typing up our notes right after the match, but sure, absolutely. This certainly felt like it was, I would say, one of that group's greatest hits in ring. They can often, especially when you're involving the Bucks and Kenny, they can tell great stories both with their athleticism, but also just with their ideas. So this was it was certainly one of those. It was one of those matches that absolutely rewarded longtime fans of like being the elite in just this group in general.
I've always thought that is the key to their connection with the fan base, that if you watch long enough, and it's not just them, it's all along Dynamite. If you watch enough, if you watch every week, you tune into the special on TNT, which was phenomenal, by the way, they reward you. And there's something nice about being a fan of something that they're going to pay it off to you. They're going to tip their cap to you. You don't feel like, you're being insulted as a viewer. The other thing I wanted to say about the show, which I thought was awesome, and they continue to do a great job about this, you hear it about the live experience when you go to Dynamite. Those bracelets were great. Like, what a visual. What a different atmosphere that created. Every crowd shot on the entrances looks cool. I would love to see them continue to elevate the live experience, or dare I say reimagine, to steal another word from a chairman of another company. What a funny thing that they're going to do a big show in Jersey. I'll actually be at that show.
You're going to Blood and Guts.
Yeah.
I will see Blood and Guts.
If you're ringside, maybe
Turner
you'll come home
with
a souvenir.
Turner doesn't seem to mind. Take care, guys.
Thank you, MJ. Yeah. That will probably be, a show that will kind of be built to like that's going to be a big show for them.
Well, we've seen them, execute this formula. Like, they're not doing pay-per-views every single month. So in place of that, they're doing their pay-per-views on their TV show.
At the big, like, Atlanta and now New Jersey.
And since the beginning of this year, it's been working. You put a subtitle name brand of your edition of Dynamite, it's going to feel that much more special. Back to the phone lines. Hansi, you're on the air. What's up?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going well. What did you think of the show tonight?
I thought the show. I really dug the show. I think my favorite in-ring matches were the tag match and the Sammy Guevara and Darby Allin, who I think he really had a breakout performance in my opinion. I was kind of I haven't been on the bandwagon of Orange Cassidy, like, you know what I mean. I just thought this guy was like a meme or a GIF worthy wrestler you post on Twitter. But after like seeing an actual match with him, I can say that I'm finally on the bandwagon of Orange Cassidy. Like, it changed my perception, and I thought the two main matches, like Cody and MJF and Moxley and Jericho, they had the right result for me. The match itself might have not been the perfect match or whatever and all that, in my personal opinion, but I like the results that were going in my opinion. Before I go, let me ask you guys, who do you guys anticipate being like Moxley's first challenger? Because, like, do you put him with somebody who, like, who isn't like established, and like you kind of prop them up and not maybe just win, but just like up their status, like a Darby Allin? Or do you go to like, Omega or Page or something like that? Like,
going back to the Jericho rematch, do you think you take a break from Jericho? Could you see Jericho disappear for a little bit? Or because I think if he's around, it's very hard to get away from Jericho immediately.
I'm kind of, yeah. I mean, at the same time, though, you can do a rematch with Jericho, but I don't know if the question would really, like, the result would really be in doubt. Because why would they put the belt just back on the Jericho, without at least one successful title defense for Moxley? So I think you could build up to like a Jericho rematch for further down the line, or even if you want like a big TV main event. But for the time being, I think a fresher challenger might be appropriate for Moxley, and you have to really think who is a high-level heel that could oppose him right now. Or does it have to be a heel?
Doesn't have to be. I mean, you can get creative with where you go. I mean, they've done
Omega.
They've done Omega.
He's
I think
busy
like
anyway.
Your heels coming out of this are MJF, Pac.
Yep.
There's the Jericho rematch option, or you go somewhere else. They kind of left things a little open-ended with Jeff Cobb, but I think the fact you beat him, like you would have to do a lot to build up to that.
Not big enough for Double or Nothing. I mean,
right.
MJF, I think I could potentially see, especially with a great build. Is Pac hot enough right now for a title match? A headline.
I don't think it takes a lot to be able to build that up, but it's not like pay-per-view headline main event right this minute.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be Cody. I mean, he lost anyway.
No.
So I think I would, of all the choices, I would say MJF.
Yeah, and maybe that's where they go. I mean, that's kind of contingent on what's this next chapter for Cody at this point. Now that he's shut out of the title, has lost to MJF, that he's in this kind of purgatory in that title picture.
We go back to the phone lines. Caller, what'd you think of Double or Revolution?
Revolution is what we're up to.
Oh my goodness.
How are you, Brandon?
You gonna be enjoying?
Doing well, man.
Are you gonna be enjoying some blood and guts in Jersey?
No, I'm not going to that show. Are you crazy? Come on.
Yeah.
It's midweek too, man. I gotta work, man. I got kids to feed.
Did you watch?
Okay.
What did you watch tonight? Did you watch the pay-per-view or did you watch Fight Night? What were you watching?
I heard about Ian Cutabella. He seemed unhappy tonight about his screw job finish with the fight tonight. But no, I watched the pay-per-view.
And what did you think?
What did you think about? Oh, I thought the Orange Cassidy was awesome, man. I'm with you, man. Fuck down straight, man. They suck so bad. I thought they were going to enter the match the way the lead singer was dressed. He was pumped. You remember where he was at and stuff like that. What did you think? What do you think of Cody's tattoo, man? I mean, it's a little too much on the neck, right? I mean, I know he loves AEW, but I mean, that tattoo.
Okay, Cody's tattoo or Jack Gallagher's new tattoos?
Oh,
you seen them, John?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Jack Gallagher's tattoo reminds me of those ships in the bottle.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about?
Yeah, certainly. Not so gentlemanly anymore.
He doesn't look like he's done either. Like it looks like
he looks like
he's
very...
started on the arm, but the other arm is just bare.
Well, I would say the same for Cody. Like, you don't just get a tattoo on your neck without at least getting something that attaches your whole like chest or sleeve or something.
I mean, I never thought I saw something more ridiculous than when Conor McGregor got that
gorilla
tattoo. But it's like you just get used to it. I don't have a big thing on tattoos.
I kind of like it now. You know, and I kind of like the sword on Brock Lesnar. Like, if Brock didn't have it, it wouldn't be Brock. And I think we'll feel the same way about Cody eventually.
So one of you guys isn't gonna get the post-wrestling tattoo on your chest.
We just made that joke, and we had this exact conversation.
Thanks for listening.
20 minutes.
I missed it.
Yeah.
My bad, man. I missed it. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you do to Orange Cassidy? I mean, he was awesome. That dude's.
Well,
you talked about that, didn't you?
Yeah, we did actually.
We've covered all
that. We talked about the pay-per-view. All right. Thank you for your call, as always.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man.
Brandon from New Jersey. There's only one.
Great appearance.
I will say, like, I think you get a great 6-man out of this on TV, but man, Pentagon and Phoenix, I think they are miscast and they are underutilized. Yeah, and I'm kind of like, if we're looking at a 6 months on TV at this point of like that, to me, they've missed on those two.
You think when you say miscast, you mean as heels?
As heels,
yeah,
yes, definitely. And Ray Phoenix, he had that phenomenal match. Like, they've had some great matches together. The tag match recently, the singles match that Phoenix and Nick Jackson had. You think of AEW, I don't think you're thinking of them. And like, they're in particular, Phoenix is one of the best in the world, and it just seems like they have been hurt the most by just the volume of guys that they're trying to get over, and it's not their time. And I would say even, a feud with the Best Friends, it's like, okay, that's fine, but to me, it's kind of, they rushed the Bucks feud, and they did all those matches and kind of peaked at Double or Nothing with the big ladder match that afterwards, once you got to TV, you had kind of done the big feud already.
Well, coming out of this, you would assume perhaps like Paige and Omega to be perfect opponents for them.
They just lost, though.
But they just lost. Yeah, so I'm not sure. I do feel like the main problem is the fact that you only have so many slots. This is only their second pay-per-view after TV, right?
Yeah.
So you only have so many storylines that you can give out. Hopefully this cycle will be different.
Yeah, and I'm sure it would be. Like, I'm sure they are, a priority. It's just where we are right now.
And figuring out a way to present them.
Yeah, that too. Like, I just think it's very hard to be in kind of a heel act, but I do look forward to them doing this, 6-man or whatever combinations we have coming out of this.
Back to the phone lines. Caller, thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
Hey, gonna keep it in New Jersey. It's Paul here.
Hey, Paul. What's up?
Hey, guys. Thought the show was enjoyable for the most part. I thought the BD watch along was really great, but I'm sorry, Brady. That downstate performance was a bag of shite. Those guys cannot sing at all. But so John, hey, that's 1 point for John. But anyway, man, big fan of Sammy Guevara. I didn't know much about that guy before All Elite. I think he's great. Him and Darby Allin. Love Orange Cassidy. Had a pleasure seeing him last year, WrestleMania weekend. And I'll just ask a quick question to let you guys go. I think it's a safe assumption to say we will probably eventually get a mid-card title. Do you think we see that soon, or is that something down the line?
You know what? Let me ask you this, Paul. Do you think like tonight's show was missing that?
I would have to say no.
I don't think so either. I think that we had 3 title matches on this show. It felt fine. You had a super grudge match in Cody and MJF that meant way more than a title would. I'm like, the only argument for it right now is that you have the person in Cody to really build this thing around as kind of right next to a main event title, because you have a main event guy that's shut out of the main title. But
the illegitimate champion holding your secondary belt.
Right. And it leads to, you could do something down the road with that, with the 2 titles or whatever. But like, I'm watching these shows, I'm not saying to myself, man, I wish we had another title.
I agree.
Yeah, that is true. I just wonder, maybe guys like Sean Spears, but again, I guess WWE has that problem because they have too many titles, and you do make a good point. It wasn't like it was lacking. I'm just curious if down the line we see like a television title of some sort. But anyway, that's my call, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you, Paul.
You too, Paul.
Like I wouldn't be totally against the idea of like a TV title, something that is only defended on television, or maybe Dark is too small for a title, but something that we might see regularly on TV. I love what like NWA is doing with their TV title, where if you defend the belt 7 times,
Lucky seven.
If you defend the belt 7 times, or if you go to a draw 7 times and your opponent fails to defeat you, you earn a title match.
Yep.
I love that idea. I mean, not to say, I want AEW to just completely copy that, but to give a different concept and a different idea for a belt, to make it different from your championship enough than just, it's another IC belt or another US belt.
And they're playing with the same, like they've got an hour every week, and they're balancing 4 titles when you throw in the national title with the tag titles, world title. And I think they've done a pretty good job of trying to differentiate it. Like Aaron Stevens is like the comedy guy. You've got the TV title. Ricky Starks is your young prospect that's now got a championship, and then you have your tag title, and then Nick Aldis, who is the central figure of that. So, but even so, like that to me would kind of be my limit. But they've opened. They mentioned it once. Like Cody brought up the idea of another championship, but we haven't really heard much from that. I don't know if the timing is right now to do that, but Cody would be my biggest argument for it, because I don't have a whole lot beyond Cody to argue for another title.
It is, I would say, like too many titles is a problem that's plaguing a lot of companies
Everyone.
right now. I mean, look at New Japan, right?
New Japan's out of control.
Look at how much it's helped all the other belts by taking the IC title out of play. Having Naito hold both belts has elevated the Never Championship. Like it makes
it's like Shingo Takagi is headlining now. And part of that's because of who he is, but also like this Never title has certainly been upgraded far beyond where it was prior.
We're seeing that with the tag team belts. Even the Rev Pro title feels like it's a bigger deal, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I look at in WWE, like the IC and US titles, to me, they mean nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Well, phone lines are still open if you guys wanted to get on, but we go to the Post Wrestling Forum right now to get some of your thoughts from people who have written in. First, we start off with Laura from Vancouver, who says, I was feeling under the weather, so I decided to stay in and check out the show. I've never been happier to be sick. That tag match was the best in-ring storytelling I've ever seen. Those guys hit Okada and Bushi at Wrestle Kingdom level of quality. Just an astonishing match. There's so many possible ways for this to go too, and they teased them all. Sammy Darby was a crash course, sugar rush, and I loved every second. Orange Cassidy versus Pac was like Batman versus Joker. Never in wrestling has 2 guys been such perfect foils for each other. I hope we get a rematch soon. Jericho has become sort of a Bruiser Brody. That match felt like a fight, and in contrast to everything that came before it, really stood out and excelled. Phenomenal post-match babyface promo from Mox. What didn't feel like a fight was Cody MJF. It lacked intensity and never felt like a grudge match at all. I was worried it might underperform, and sadly I was right. Not to mention the god-awful live performance from Downstate and that ridiculous neck tattoo that instantly lowers Cody's it factor. Downstate being a...
So what did you think about like the entrance? Because like on the one hand, I can certainly see like there would be the argument that, especially in Cody's role, like it's very indulgent. But to counter that, like he felt like the biggest star in the world coming out, and I think that is
big entrances are Cody's thing.
Yeah,
like from the
and
first
I think
show.
You've grown to expect that.
A big entrance just to me doesn't make a person heel or babyface. It makes the match feel big. That's all it was to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't say like this didn't have the element. Like to me, the grudge match, it was like you got blood. You had the guy,
But was the blood on the right guy? And like was the blood? Did it feel earned? Did it even add to the match?
I would certainly argue that like MJF, like I bring up the entrance because it's like you've got this army behind Cody to take on MJF.
Yeah.
It's like the guy, and yes, you can break it down. Like MJF is the prick heel, but it's just, you're watching this and it's like, there's a part of you that's rooting for MJF. It's like, he's busted up. You've got the Brandy spot I did not like. It's like totally unprovoked. Wardlow's just standing there. He hasn't done anything in the match and gets a beer thrown in his face.
I agree that the optics, like, I don't think work towards Cody's favor. Like, having 2 people on his side, granted, yes, it is Brandy, and granted, it's Arn Anderson against Wardlow, I understand. But I don't think you needed Brandy there. I really don't.
I like Arn in his corner. I like Brandy in his corner, but not both.
Yes.
I think it's one or the other, and I think Brandy, this is kind of her It's like, okay,
I'm done with the Nightmare Collective.
It
I need
ended,
something
and
to
this
do.
is her role for now until we figure something out. And it's just, to me, like, it almost just feels like MJF is battling the numbers here, even with Wardlow there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was some of that there as well.
At the very least, I think maybe Wardlow didn't initiate the first attack, you know, like in the
No, it was only after he got the beer and everything that he attacked Cody's arm.
Yeah. Anyway, so
I mean, anyone that's ever had a beer thrown in you, I mean, I think you'd sympathize with Wardlow wanting to break this guy's arm.
Davian's just like nodding. Yeah, I told you guys.
Let's continue here with Alex. Didn't love it, although I might be in the minority. I had high expectations, and I feel that only the tag title match lived up to them. MJF and Cody match was odd, with Cody trying to pin him early and not hurt him. The women's match was unwatchable and sloppy. I thought someone might die at the end off the rope. The main event was heated, but just didn't feel like it clicked, and I felt Jericho was hotter than Moxley and should have kept the title. High Hopes was a decent show, but fell short for me, perhaps too high of a hype. 7 out of 10.
Got a Chris from Melbourne who says, I feel like Cody's real life taste is going to turn him heel sooner than any of his actual character work. If his take my car, take my red bottoms, take this briefcase of cash promo wasn't far enough, tonight was a whole new level. Coming out with a huge entourage, personal coach, and Brandy playing cheerleader, Cody looked like the ultimate high school jock D-bag. I really want to hate his character as much as I hate his awful new neck tat. I love this show. First couple of AEW pay-per-views felt like there were too many chefs in the kitchen and no cohesive flow to the show. Everything is ironed out now, and Revolution was well worth the buy from start to finish.
Okay, Sean from Toronto. Other than the women's title match being the victim of bad placement, this was probably the best pay-per-view so far from AEW. The tag title bout was easily match of the night, and I liked how the Hangman Elite story is being given the slow burn. Orange Cassidy Pac was incredibly entertaining and a surprise highlight for me. While there are definitely some who feel it is too early for Jericho to lose the title, you do have to admit that he has already run through all the babyface challengers other than Kenny Omega, who is busy with his storyline with Hangman. Having the belt on Moxley does allow people like Pac and MJF step up for title matches, not to mention the inevitable Jericho rematch.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Adam from Wellington, New Zealand says, really enjoyable, well-paced show. Tag match was fantastic and the rest of the card was above average. Well, everything except for Cody MJF. While it didn't offend me by any means, small things like the obnoxious over-the-top entrance to Cody going for pinfalls a few minutes in, and even Brandy baiting Wardlow left me more than confused than anything, considering their blood feud.
The early pins, like, that's a totally valid critique.
Also, given the recent signings and rumors, I thought I bought into there being a surprise run-in or reveal that never happened, and I was waiting for it after every match. But that one's totally on me. Question, you probably discussed this, but who do you guys want to see in the AEW War Games match? And is this where you end the Moxley-Jericho feud to start something fresh with the title?
Well, I think you've got to have, whether it's 4-on-4 or 5-on-5, like some kind of team. So I would be either... I mean, the storyline right now is more so on the 4 members of the Elite with Omega, Page, and the Bucks who have to reluctantly come together and get on the same page. Or you could include Cody there, and that's just if you want to tie in that story to the War Games as well. But I think that's probably where you go. And then the other 4 could be, I mean, whoever.
Inner Circle?
It could be the Inner Circle. Like, that's the easy one to go to. If Cody's in there, then I almost feel like MJF has to be.
I think like doing an Elite versus Inner Circle might be kind of like a waste of those spots. You know, if you plug certain people in, like say a Darby Allin to one of those spots, they stand to gain a lot more than, you know, maybe like a Nick Jackson or Matt Jackson might.
Yeah, I would just say I really like the Elite in there. It's just like that they make the most sense, especially for this first one. And given that it is kind of like it's going to be War Games, but just not in name, that you would assume Cody's going to kind of be in there somehow.
Do you think it's a mistake to not save the first War Games for a pay-per-view?
Yeah, I don't mind them doing it on TV for like one big show as opposed to the pay-per-view. Yeah, and we'll see what they have planned and like what comes out of it. Like, I hope it's a bunch of different, kind of like a Royal Rumble where you have all these different stories coming out of it as well. Like, we'll have some feuds going in, but also some things that come out of it. So it does feel like a significant show that's kind of one rung below a pay-per-view. Noah from Vaughn writes, I was at the show live and had an absolute blast. The tag match was incredible, and Orange Cassidy versus Pac was amazing to be in attendance for. The atmosphere all night was fantastic, and I'm so glad I made the trip from Toronto. 10 out of 10 live event experience. I'm glad Moxley won the belt. Sometimes you just have to go with the hot babyface and get the win. By the way, before the pre-show, they had a women's tag match for Dark. Yuka and Riho versus Penelope Ford and Britt Baker.
Okay.
So we'll see that this week.
Raphael from North Liberty says, Revolution was well worth the $50. The highlights were the tag title match, Orange Cassidy versus Pac, and the Mox win. I love pro wrestling, and shows like this only help to remove the cynicism that years of WWE booking can put on a fan.
It's interesting to note, like, there's nobody bringing up, like, the price tag being any kind of hindrance or...
If you have a good time, I think people can, like, feel good about spending $50.
And I think largely from what we're hearing from is people, felt it was definitely worth it for the show. Doug from Derbyshire in the UK. Apologies for this feedback. It's a bit lengthy. High point of the show was the Bucks versus Omega and Page. It was a very tough match for Nyla Rose and Kris Statlander to follow. You could hear the crowd heat ebbing away, and I don't think it was ever regained fully. The nods to both Kota Ibushi and Marty Scurll during the tag bout only added to the storytelling and history of the match, and I feel it was the standout of the night for that reason alone, regardless of the excellent in-ring action. Darby and Sammy tore it up with a great encounter. That botched suicide dive by Allin was brutal, but not so much as the skateboard throw to the head he took immediately after. That said, the two of them went on to have an exciting and satisfying match. Cody MJF was exactly what the match needed to be, with just the right level of shenanigans and heel work, and goes on to add that his biggest issues were, A, the production issues AEW has dealt with since the launch are gradually but surely being worked through. Regardless of JR's slips, the commentary team has solidified into a three-man booth. Long-term storytelling is alive and well. And D, Jericho's entrance can only be bested by itself.
It was a very good entrance.
Jericho called it the best entrance of his entire career.
Okay. What are some of the other ones that he's...
I mean, he's never had like a live performance or anything like that. So, I mean, in terms of like a big entrance, like he
had the thing at Double or Nothing, I believe. With like the
different
phases.
Iterations of Jericho.
It
was like you could tell there was thought there for it, but it was kind of almost like.
Has he ever had a big Mania entrance?
Just with pyro, but nothing with like any props or stuff like that.
I would argue his first entrance was pretty damn great.
Where?
Like the countdown, The Rock.
Oh, on Raw.
Yeah,
absolutely. That was that would probably be it. I mean, the first when he came out for the Omega match, like that was like. Just the vibe in the building, and he's also coming out to his own music.
All right, we go to Zeriki, who says, Brandon says, overall, I'd say this was just a really fun show. Tag title match was incredible. Allin and Guevara was entertaining, and the Pac Cassidy fight was an actual funny comedy match, but then got pretty serious. And honestly, if someone takes out Jericho and becomes the new Inner Circle leader, and Jericho kind of went away for a while, he did an amazing job getting AEW running. He would also get an amazing babyface reaction when he returned. Don't really see that. Can you see that happening? Chris Jericho being ousted as the Inner Circle leader and perhaps returning as a babyface?
No. Way
too soon.
Like there is a time you could use Jericho as a babyface. I don't see that anytime near. Like Jericho just taking the title off him. I mean, he has been. You cannot underemphasize how important this guy has been to the success of this company. Like to me, he is number one. Mm-hmm. He is number one of anyone that they have signed for the success they've had on television, for what he's doing with the younger talent, just making this title important. I think that like his value, I think honestly, when you look back at the career of Chris Jericho, it's going to be 2018, 19, and 20 that are going to be his most important years of his career, which is really staggering when you consider this guy's did this beginning in 1990.
What do you see next for him?
That's a great question. Like I know he does have Fozzy dates coming up, but it's it looks, you can see the schedule. I don't know how much it's going to conflict with AEW. It seems like it's a lot of like weekend stuff, and so I don't know. At some point, I imagine he's going to take a break at some point. Like that's just always been his schedule. I'm surprised he has gone this consistently with AEW since they've launched. So at some point, I imagine a break, but if I was AEW, I would be. You've built a very solid foundation, I think, with your audience now, that I would be less concerned about Jericho going away for a month or two. But to me, he's still like the main player on the show, and that's why I kind of lean towards, if you can keep him, I'd be leaning towards Moxley and Jericho again, potentially for May.
Double or nothing.
For Double or Nothing. Like, I think of all the options right now, that is the biggest one, but maybe it is time to get someone fresh in there and get Jericho into something else that could be very interesting.
I'm just trying to think who else there might be right now that would be a good fit for Jericho.
I mean, he's worked with a lot of interesting ones already, like from Jungle Boy and Scorpio Sky and Darby Allin. It's like he's certainly worked with like a wide variety of people so far. Cody, he did the match with as well.
Kenny, yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a clear idea. I guess we'll see if it's not the Moxley rematch. That would be my guess off the top.
Your turn.
Mine is Raymond from Sacramento, who was at Revolution. I'm going to keep this short. I have been to Double or Nothing, All Out, the first Dynamite in Washington, Full Gear, and now Revolution. Outside of Moxley's first appearance at Double or Nothing, I have not experienced a crowd pop that big for someone like they did when Orange Cassidy debuted as a full-blown wrestler in his performance tonight.
One of the highlights of the show. I'm telling you, he's the Brock Lesnar of AEW.
Like, it sounded like it sounded like the loudest reaction of the show was for Orange Cassidy's fire-ups. People may not have understood that the gimmick before, but this was his wrestling coming out party to the masses. Guy can work, and the crowd was in love with him. I adore the guy. 9 out of 10 show.
Well, he's another one. I mean, how often do you use him?
I wouldn't overdo it.
How do you build this momentum, though? Yeah, I would save his actual singles appearances as much as you can.
I was really glad that they saved this for a pay-per-view.
Me too.
And didn't just feel like 1 week this can be something we throw out on TV. Because I don't think I was really glad that they put this on pay-per-view. And this was like, if you tuned in for the first time and you were fresh to AEW, there's no way you're turning out of the show and not leaving with an impression made by Orange Cassidy. Like, I think if you were to ask, what were the 3 things you remember on this show? Orange Cassidy is in everyone's top 3 list.
Yeah. All right, we got Eric from Savage, who says, I thought the show as a whole was very good. The tag title match was one of the 5 best tag matches I've ever seen. The Pac versus Orange Cassidy match over-delivered on my already high expectations, and the Sammy versus Darby match was a fun sprint. To top it off, Cody versus MJF was truly excellent storytelling. Thumbs up show for sure. 8 out of 10 Mox eye patches.
And the last one here, Miles from Chicago. Went to the show tonight. Great time overall. The fans are really there to have a great time and get behind all of the performers, and AEW really seem to be ready to deliver every time. Matches of the night from a live perspective were the tag title match and the main event. I'm going to miss Le Champion, but excited to see where they go next with Jericho. Thank you to everybody for tuning in for this live edition of the AEW Revolution post show and all the calls.
Yeah, very quickly. In a few hours, we'll be releasing an edition of Thunderstruck with WH Park on the main feed, so you should be able to hear that.
The guest is Mike Spears from the Voices of Wrestling Network, and they're going to be chatting Jushin Thunder Liger and Shima from April 9th of 2000.
Big thank you to all of the Double Plus patrons that are in the chat room right now, listening to this, watching us live on our live stream on YouTube. Live pay-per-views are available to all Double Ice Cap and Espresso patrons at postwrestlingcafe.com. So I want to give some shout-outs. Hello to Bruhavin again. Hello, Adam. Hello, Eric Marcotte. Hello, Kenneth Trainer. Hello, Raymond Terry. Thank you guys for joining us this late. And Eric, what's up? How's it going? Thank you for joining us. Rewind Away next week on Saturday or Tuesday.
Yes, Tuesday.
PWG.
Yes, Tuesday we're back with Rewind Away. PWG 11 from July of 2014. Kevin Steen's farewell.
Wow.
He's off to the orphanage in Mexico to help his friend El Generico, and this is his farewell to pro wrestling.
This card is crazy when you think about the fact that it's only been 5 years. Okay, let's see who's on this card and see where they are right now. Tommaso Ciampa, Rocky Romero. We have ACH, Cedric Alexander, the Best Friends, Chuck and Trent, Johnny Gargano, Michael Elgin, Trevor Lee, Kevin Steen, Frankie Kazarian, Brian Kendrick, Roderick Strong, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Chris Hero, Candice LeRae, the Young Bucks, Joey Ryan. But people who essentially run Wednesday nights. So we'll be talking about this show from 6 years ago.
And on commentary, we have Excalibur with such partners throughout the night as Roderick Strong, Chris Hero, and for the last half of the show, Kevin Steen.
Excellent.
So all of that will be reviewed on Tuesday night. Also, for next week, we'll be doing this exact same thing on Sunday night, right after the Elimination Chamber show. So it's the beginning of the month. Great time to sign up for the Post Wrestling Cafe to get your most value out of the cafe. $6 a month gets you access to all of our bonus shows, and then Double, Ice Cap, and Espresso patrons can tune in live right after Elimination Chamber for this post show.
And also, Post Wrestling Live in Tampa.
Correct. On Sunday, April the 5th, we're at the Art Institute of Tampa. Noon Eastern time, we're going to be doing a Q&A, meet and greet right afterwards, and VIP tickets also get you a special lunch with us ahead of the Q&A, a commemorative post-wrestling Live in Tampa shirt, and a parking spot.
A parking spot, beautiful.
Parking spot, an official post-wrestling parking spot.
$5 off for all patrons. As John said, it is March 1st, so it is the perfect time to jump on board. Postwrestling.com or postwrestlingcafe.com. I'll get that right eventually.
Gets you access to all of the content that we've ever produced on the Post Wrestling Cafe.
I've been told that we've surpassed 1,000 podcasts, like either this episode or the episode prior. So 1,000 podcasts, John, since December of 2017.
Damn, that's a lot of shows.
It's a lot of talking.
Well, Wai and I will bid everyone farewell. We will be back on Monday night following Raw and whatever happens on that show. So thank you to everybody for tuning in live or checking out the podcast. Postwrestling.com is where you can go check out everything, and we'll speak with you later on this week.